And we are back on Take Action News. And Mr. President, we're still waiting for that action. We look forward to it with great enthusiasm. Now is the time when I promised you some more thoughts on Christie. And we'll try to be as good as our word here on Take Action News. But let me tell you, I'm already sick of the guy. And if he really does wind up being the candidate, that's going to make it a rough couple of years for me. But look, there's probably very few people within the sound of my voice who don't know what's going on with Christie. That a couple people on his staff organized horrendous traffic backups in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Now, if you don't know the area well, you may not know. It's always horrible there, but what we're really talking about is hours in which an entire small town was gridlocked. Kids were stuck in their school buses. A 91-year-old woman, or ambulance wasn't able to reach her. There were other delayed first responders. I mean, just catastrophic, tragic. And as it turns out, this was apparently an act of political vengeance, probably against the mayor of Fort Lee, although there are other stories or other theories, but that appears to be the most plausible one. And among other things, when someone said flippantly, "I feel badly for those kids in school buses," the answer was, and I paraphrase, "Don't, they're the children of Democratic voters, Buono voters." Mr. Christie's gubernatorial opponent was named Barbara Buono. So, we have not only, by all accounts, someone who is a bullying, nasty human being, and you don't need to go to conspiracy theories or email records for that. There are enough video clips of Christie bullying teachers or bullying ordinary citizens who ask him legitimate questions. So the guy's a bully. There's no question about it. This was an act of bullying which somehow he claims he didn't know anything about. Now, those of us who are old enough to remember Watergate will have experienced a certain sense of deja vu at Mr. Christie's, Governor Christie's press conference yesterday. His stories didn't hang together. They don't add up. This guy has a history of using his office for political gain and for getting even and scorekeeping. So really none of this should be a surprise to anybody. The best case, the fantasy case, which is entirely implausible, but let's give it credence for a second, that the guy knew nothing about any of this. He hired all the people involved. And I don't believe he knew nothing. I personally don't believe that. I think the question now is a question for our journalistic and pundit class. Will they treat Christie's ethical lapses, this one and others, including the misuse of his office when he was a federal prosecutor, to violate Justice Department guidelines and prosecute, or claim he was about to prosecute, a Democratic senatorial candidate right before an election? They're always told to avoid doing that because it interferes with the political process and/or appears to. So the guy has a long, sleazy history. The question now is whether our pundit class will hold him to the kind of standard they would presumably hold a Democrat to, or whether they'll continue their adoration for him despite this. Now, I will say, look, I was interviewed by a reporter this morning. It's high pressure to be interviewed on tough, complex questions in real time. There's no question about it. I always think of that in terms of our guests and try to put them at ease. But that said, I have to say that Christie's press conference performance was extremely impressive. But a cat burglar's ability to pick a lock in 10 seconds is also extremely impressive. It doesn't make it admirable. So my attitude about Christie is we know what the man is. My question now is, do we know if our journalistic class is willing to act like journalists and continue to investigate this story and pursue it wherever it may lead? Number one. Number two, are the elected officials in the state of New Jersey going to do their job and investigate it to the bitter end? I believe they will. It looks like they will. Number three, it will be very interesting to see what the local federal prosecutor plans to do with this, since there are potential crimes involved, how seriously he's going to take it. Now, there are those who suggest that Christie's national career is toast. That may or may not be true. I certainly hope it's true. But look, the fact is that everybody said back in 1956 that Richard Nixon's political career was toast after he gave the Chequers speech, but the public bought the Chequers speech. Yesterday's the Chequers speech was one where, after Nixon had been accused of accepting gifts and bribes, he said, well, you know, they did give us a little dog, which my children have named Chequers, and by gosh, we're keeping the dog because the kids love it, or words to that effect. Now, as far as I'm concerned, yesterday's press conference was Chris Christie's Chequers conference. We know what kind of human being Richard Nixon was. I believe we know what kind of human being Chris Christie is. The question is whether the people of New Jersey will have their questions answered for them, or whether, in fact, we will see Chris Christie as a viable presidential candidate in 2016. You can never count these guys out, especially with so much financial resource behind them and such a pliant press corps. So let's hope the press corps does its job. Look, if he is the candidate, they're going to tell us he's a different kind of Republican. But that's the point I made yesterday, which I guess last hour Roger Hickey pointed out. I wrote a piece called "The Real Face of the Republican Party is Chris Christie," and I believe that. I believe they will do anything to win. I believe they will do anything to crush their opponents. I believe that that party, which once represented a different, legitimate political point of view, is now a party of corporate expediency, and I believe nobody represents that more effectively than Chris Christie. So at the end of the day, I guess we'll see what happens to Chris Christie, but whether he falls or whether he somehow comes out on this, the Republican Party will be the same. The political process will continue to be corrupted by corporate money, which is what a lot of this is about, which is what Lawrence Lessig is marching across New Hampshire to end. And I believe these are the issues that we should be focusing on. The effect of money in politics, those politicians who pretend that they are offering something different but really offer more of the same, and the ugly face behind it. And I'll close with this. Everybody says that Chris Christie won a landslide election because he won 60% of the vote against 40% for his opponent. An increase in the minimum wage was also on the New Jersey ballot. That won by a similar margin, without the dirty tricks, without the dirty politicking, without closing 3 lanes of the George Washington Bridge. So let's leave it at that. Without any of the corporate money behind it, the people of New Jersey wanted an increase to the minimum wage at least as much as they wanted Chris Christie. We'll be right back.